That's how it starts. When I got home, I raced against time to park and get to Ben Gurion Airport in Tel Aviv. I was exhausted and dreaded the usual 3 hours of questioning and interrogation by Israeli airport security. Shalom, מאיפה אתה? Hello, where are you from? In a Hebrew accent, while gargling the air in Yerushalayim, I said, Ani ba Yerushalayim. I come from Jerusalem. She continued, where exactly do you come from? If I answered with East Jerusalem, it would be assumed I was an Arab. And if I answered with West Jerusalem, it would be assumed I was Jewish. I replied, Antonia Street, Old City. She checked my passport, but my place of origin was still not clear to her. She asked me for my father's name, Emile, your mother's, Espérance, your grandfather's, Anton. What is the origin of the name Sabella? Italian. Do you celebrate Hanukkah? Why not? Do you celebrate Christmas? Sure. She was hesitant to ask if I was an Arab or Palestinian Arab. To speed things up, I told her I came from Jerusalem, the Arab one. All I wanted was to board the plane and close my eyes. What is your occupation? Artist. I also work for the UN as a photographer. I showed her my press card. Where were you before you arrived at the airport? I couldn't tell her I had just been kidnapped in Gaza. She would consider it a security threat and definitely not allow me to board the plane in Jerusalem. And why are you going to Switzerland? To have a holiday with my wife and daughter. My wife is Swiss. Why are you traveling alone? Why do you work with the UN? Have you traveled to Gaza with the UN? Why do you live in Jerusalem? Why don't you live in Switzerland? When did your family settle in Jerusalem? Why is your name Steve? The questions were endless, and the first security guard was replaced by a second, and the second by a third, until the chief of security was called. I kept repeating the same narrative again and again. I had to be consistent and not make any mistakes. Listen to me. This is my story. No matter how long you interrogate me, it will not change. Either you let me go home to Jerusalem, or you let me board the flight. Let's get it over with. They gave in, allowed me to board after a conspicuous bag check and a full body search, escorted me to the plane like a VIP, and finally left me. I found my seat, sat down, and leaned back to close my eyes for the first time in 2 days. But every time I heard the click of a seatbelt, I woke up startled. It sounded like the cocking of the kidnappers' guns. I opened my restless eyes and spotted a man watching me. He was black. And I imagined for a moment he was the man the kidnappers released that morning. When he noticed that I spotted him, he unbuckled the seatbelt, walked over, and sat down on the aisle seat next to me. He spread open a newspaper and pointed to a photograph. Is this you? It showed a woman and me with guns all around us, and the bold title read, UN workers freed in Gaza. I burst into laughter and said, sometimes the answer is right there in front of you. Up in the air, I traveled to the time I went skydiving in Haifa. On the tarmac, the plane looked like it hadn't flown since the 1967 war. After takeoff, the engine roared as if it could fail any second, shaking wildly as it reached the sky. When the time came, I unbuckled my seatbelt and leaned out of the open door against a strong wind. Without much thought, I did it. I let go. I was flying in the air. I felt light, less burdened by what was happening below. I felt identityless, free from all the labels and classifications, free from all the racism and discrimination, free from the Israeli occupation I was born into. But there is always a but. I didn't open the parachute. I was in a tandem jump attached to an Israeli. Over the years, I have come to see this situation in the air as a metaphor for what it means to be a Palestinian living under Israeli occupation.